Good evening, and welcome to Aurora's Committee of Adjustment meeting. Let me first apologize. You may have heard some of the discussions that were going on prior to this meeting. We actually sit on a number of committees and tribunals. We did not expect the previous session to go as long as it did, and so I apologize for the wait. However, tribunals have a way of going that way. So again, my apologies. I'll start by introducing the committee members and staff. I am the chair of the committee. My name is Tom Plamondon, and the remaining members of the committee are as follows. To my right is the vice chair, Clarence Louis. And to the right of him, Daniel Lajeunesse. To my left, Michel Boyer. And immediately on my left, Steve D'Angeli. Secretary of the, the planner is, or are we now Secretary Matthew, officially? All right, for today, while he is the Secretary and Secretary Treasurer and the planner, is Matthew Peverini. For each application that will be considered tonight, the following process will occur. I will briefly outline the purpose of the application or applications, and then the applicant or agent will be given the opportunity to make a presentation. However, one is not required. It is the applicant's decision whether they wish to speak or let the application proceed on the merits of the information as received. Following any initial comments from the applicant, I will invite members of the public who have an interest in the application to come forward and address the committee. Those members of the public who wish to speak must clearly state their name and address and sign the corresponding request for notice form on the table in front of us here on my left. After completing the form, please hand it to the Secretary Treasurer. Each individual may speak only once on an issue, and once discussion has commenced in respect of a motion, no further presentations shall be made. If you wish any assistance with regards to visual material or technical assistance, please let me know before making your presentation. This is a public meeting, and it is being audio and video recorded. Your name, address, and comments, and any other personal information are being recorded in accordance with the Municipal Act and the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. This will help our town clerk prepare accurate minutes and to create a record that is available to the general public, including on the town's website. Questions about this collection should be directed to the town clerk. Please be advised that the reports being considered tonight are available as well on the table in front of us. Should you wish to receive notification of any of the decisions for tonight's meeting, please complete the appropriate form. Owners and agents will automatically be notified. Please ensure that all questions and or comments are directed through me as the chair, and if relevant, I will request the appropriate person respond. It should be noted that the applicant will be given the opportunity to respond to questions or comments should the committee feel that it is appropriate. So, for this evening, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Clarence?
Through the chair, I move for the approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting, February 6, 2020.
Thank you. Seconder? Stephen? Thank you. All in favor? That carries. I'll ask members of the committee, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof on any of these? Seeing none, thank you. I'll look for a motion for the adoption of the minutes of the Committee of Adjustment of December the 12th, and that is meeting number 19-12. Motion to adopt.
Through the chair, I move that we accept the minutes as noted for meeting number 19-12.
Thank you. Seconder? Clarence? Thank you. All in favor? And Stephen wasn't here, so he'll abstain or does not vote. Presentation of the applications for this evening. So the first application that we have for consideration is a minor variance application for 18 Kalia Avenue, and this is minor variance 2019-26. The owner is requesting relief from the requirements of the town's comprehensive zoning bylaw 6000-17 as amended to permit a step encroachment as it relates to an as-built basement walk-up located at the rear of a single family dwelling. Section 4.20 permits a maximum yard encroachment of 2 meters into a required yard. The applicant is proposing a step encroachment of 3.4 meters into the required rear yard. And we have departments and agencies that have been circulated. The building division preliminary zoning review conducted and no comments provided, specifically on the application at the time of the report. Engineering services, no concerns, subject to submission and approval of a revised grading plan. Operational services, no concerns with the proposed minor variance. Central York Fire Services, no comments provided at the time of the report. Legal services, no comments provided. Regional Municipality of York, no concerns with the proposed minor variance, as well as the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. The applicant or agent, good evening and welcome.
Carlette, I'm here on behalf of Manziana Home Builders.
Thank you. Any presentation that you wish to make?
No presentation, and we accept the conditions as set in the planning notes.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this application? No. Comments or questions from members of the committee? None. Wow. That's terrific. I don't think I've ever seen that. Wow.
So you just won the jackpot?
All right. I, as well, don't have any comments or questions, so I will look to the committee for a motion. Stephen.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I motion that minor variance application 2019-26 be approved, subject to the conditions as noted in the staff report.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Michelle? Thank you. Call a question. All in favor? That carries. You as well. Thank you very much. We're back on track time-wise. All right, thank you. The second application for this evening is 93 and 97 Kennedy Street East. We'll do the consents together. So there's a consent application 2019-14 and consent application 2019-15. So the purpose of these consent applications is a proposed consent applications to sever a portion of the subject properties to create a new residential lot fronting on Edward Street. And let me go to in Appendix A, comments and departments circulated. What I will do here is I'm not going to read through all of them. I will just highlight the sections of concern or particular note. For example, in the first one, building division, very bottom, we have reviewed the submitted documents and based on the information provided, parts 2 and 4 as indicated on the draft survey plan survey complies with the requirements of the zoning bylaw. In the engineering division, they have no concerns with the subject consent applications subject to the applicant providing the secretary treasurer confirmation in writing from the Director of Planning and Development Services that satisfies the arrangements that are outlined below. I won't go through all of them, but when we get to the applicant, we'll make sure that the applicant understands those, and we can go over them in detail then if required. Operational Services Division and Parks. This one, at the very top, it's indicated that reviewed the documentation for the subject property and note that the property proposed to be severed contains a number of mature and maturing trees with full canopy that will be significantly impacted and or will need to be removed should the development occur on the severed lot. At the very bottom of that, tree removals proposed prior to execution of a site plan agreement will require a permit in accordance with bylaw number 5850-16. Continuing, Central York Fire Services, no comments provided at the time of the writing of the report. Legal Services, the same comment. The Regional Municipality of York, the applicant must confirm with the Town of Aurora that adequate water and wastewater servicing is available for the newly created lot. Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority, Conservation Region Authority. Subject property is not regulated under Ontario Regulation 179-06 of the Conservation Authorities Act. Therefore, they will not be commenting or collecting the LSRCA review fee. Hydro One, we have reviewed the documents concerning the noted application and have no comments or concerns at this time. Electric Utilities, reviewed the proposed consent application and have no objections to its approval, subject to the conditions listed. Rogers Communication reviewed the proposed lot area and do not have any comments or concerns at this time. So, applicant or agent? Is the applicant or agent here? Good evening, sir, and welcome.
Hello, Council. As outlined by you, we, in conjunction...
Your name and your address, please.
Pardon me?
And, yeah, lift it, please. Thank you.
In conjunction with my neighbor, Greg Oldendorf, we want to sever the most southern 50 feet of each of our properties to create...
And your name?
My name is Thomas Steele. I live at 97 Kennedy Street East. And this is Greg Oldendorf. He lives at 93 Kennedy Street East.
Thank you.
So in conjunction between the two of us, we want to sever the most southern 50 feet of each of our properties to create a new property, residential property, 50 by 100 feet.
Okay. And with the documentation that has been circulated, have you looked at the conditions of the consent?
Yes, we have.
And are you in agreement with those conditions as set out in the staff report?
Yes, we will.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because there's some conditions there that we don't know whether they can be satisfied or not. For example, with regards to sanitary and water and that kind of thing, I'll assume that you've done some homework on that and are fairly confident that services, for example, can be provided. Trees that are going to be removed will obtain those necessary permits, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, we have the tree removal that would need to take place, but as proposed building that would accommodate that property, there's still a lot of green space in order to to accommodate trees and replace anything that needed to be cut down. Also on my property is I have probably 15 mature trees that will, be part of that neighborhood as well.
Okay. Any comments from members of the committee? Or first of all, let me start. Is there anyone here from the public? Is there anything you wish to add first?
Name is Greg Oldenoff. I live at 93 Kennedy Street East in Aurora. I originally bought the property from a builder, and that builder was proposing to sell me a property that was 50 by 170. His name is Denny Vatisse, and we put an agreement of purchase and sale together for the extra the extra 50 feet, because he was working with Thomas at that time, and that severance couldn't go through. Originally, Denny had consent from the town to move forward with the steps that are, taking place where we are today, but he never got that far. Unfortunately, they just weren't able to come together in a timely fashion, and I ended up purchasing the property with the extra 50 feet with the intent of hoping to one day sever and, have the portion of the lot that I originally wanted to purchase.
Okay. Thank you for that. Is there anyone here from the public who wishes to speak? Gentlemen, yes. So we'll just ask the applicant to have a seat for a moment. And yes, please come forward, sir. And just welcome and give us your name and your address for the record.
Wales. I live at 92 Cousins Drive, and on the map here I would be lot 32. I'm objecting to this. It's when we all moved into that area, and I've been there 30 some odd years, we bought because the lots were big. You can build a bigger house, but you can't build more land. It's real simple. It's been that way for 30 odd years. The only trouble with where I live, at the back of the property, is my understanding is an underground stream. So over the last 30 years, I've had a lot of water problems because of nature, which that's fine. My neighbor on my east side has had water problems because of the stream. My neighbor on the west side, it just goes on and on. So if there is a stream there, environmentally, what has anybody done to find out if it's going to be a problem? Now, I have a large tree, maybe 50, 60 feet high, probably 80 to 100 years old. Some neighbors diagonally to me, they had the same thing, very mature trees, 60, 100 years old. If there is an underground stream at the back of the property, and if that stream, that flow is interrupted by a building, what is that going to do to the mature trees? Are they going to die off? Is it going to be expensive? Is it going to create my lot, make it into a marsh that's unusable? I mean, what's a contingency plan when something like this happens and it creates an environmental issue for the people that live there? I mean, is the town going to say, well, your property's gone down 25%, but we'll make that up? Oh, we're dropping 2 tons of dirt to build the property up. I mean, what is the contingency plan if this kind of thing happens? Now, have I ever seen the stream? No. When I moved in, I had a neighbor. His name was Bud Gilbert, very well known in this town. He bought his house in 1957, same year as mine was built, 57, 56. He had the same water problems that I got until he left the house in 2003. So to me, there's an environmental problem. Secondly, it's a wide open space, mature trees. I don't really want to go out in the morning and see a big brick wall looking at me. You know, That's not why I moved to Aurora. That's why I've been here for 35 years. It's not to look at a wall, right? I don't want to get into reasons I went to severance, but everybody that bought in this town knew the size of the lot they were buying when they bought it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You don't go and buy a 200-foot lot because you only want 50. You don't buy. It's that simple. So, if you go ahead with this without doing an environmental assessment, are you showing due diligence? I don't know. Only you can answer that. There you go.
Just to pick up on your comments, sir. I understand your comment related to environmental issues and the potential for or impact of construction on an underground stream. You know, those types of things, those types of conditions exist throughout the municipality. When we are looking at these types of developments or redevelopments or creations of new lots within the municipality, we have to assess them on the basis of planning merit. And I can tell you that on a number of applications, I've sat on this committee for, I guess, what is it, Matthew, now? We're up to almost 5 years, I guess, eh? We've had many of these types of applications come forward with the same comments that I'm hearing from you. And we've watched infill where concerns that you raise have a technical, in almost all cases, a technical solution. I won't get into them. They're engineering, and I'm not an engineer. But a lot of them are engineering related, or, as you know, in some cases they're how the land is graded or what types of landscaping are provided. In some cases it's the addition of retaining walls, those types of things. And so when we look at other comments that you made, such as you don't want to be looking at a wall, or protection of open space, for example, and persons buying a 200-foot depth lot because they wanted a 200-foot depth lot. Why wouldn't they get a 100-foot lot? Those types of conditions within the municipality, in many municipalities, you know, through not just Aurora, Newmarket, York region, throughout the country, are becoming more common. And they relate to a number of conditions, affordable housing. You know, the provinces, for example, pressed municipalities to make better use of the infrastructure that is already in the ground. And this type of thing is one of those ways that that allows development to occur within an existing community where those services are available. You heard me reference that in the comments that were made by engineering. They have to make sure that there are services and capacity available to service that lot that doesn't affect your services. Similarly, they can't raise or lower the property so as to create a problem for your drainage. And that happens at site plan. They will have to go through all of those at that time. I'm sure that the applicant here does not want to create a problem for you or themselves that results in problems for their own property, as it were.
Property, it's cut off from their property. If there's a disaster, it doesn't affect them. Water, to my knowledge, does not run uphill, only goes downhill. Correct? So we have these lots that are all big, 50 by 200. and we're gonna stick a 50 by 100 in the middle and maybe affect the environment, and that's acceptable? I don't know, is it?
It's only well, it is acceptable from a zoning perspective. For example, this severance has to meet certain size requirements, and they apply throughout the zone. It's not just your property and their property. So they're not asking us to, make it a smaller lot than the bylaw allows.
Because it wouldn't make sense, would it? Not if you're doing it that way.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be
And
an
that-
80-foot lot, it's just not gonna make, doesn't make sense. I understand what they're doing, right? But you also understand the impact affects everybody. It affects neighbors down the street, it affects neighbors on my side. The land's the way it is. It's been there for time began. The streams are there. Once you start digging, you start moving just for a small piece of land where they're gonna build a great big house, right? Because that's what they do in Aurora. They rip them all down, build massive great houses. It affects everybody. It affects everybody's way of living. And there's enough land in this town, you don't have to start breaking up lots. Then I'll break up a lot, then I'll break up a lot. Next thing you know, you've got townhouses everywhere, right? Anyway, that's all I gotta say.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Adjustment Committee. I hope you're having a good evening. My name is Sean Herbinson. I am a resident at 88 Cousins Drive in Aurora, next door to John. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting my neighbors on the other side, and I would say right up front that if I was in their shoes, I would be trying to do this same thing that they're doing. However, I do have to register my opposition to a gentleman. For the same reasons John has stated, I'm very concerned about drainage. I bought my home a year and a half ago. I love my lot, the depth of my lot, and the privacy. We have water issues. We have water issues that drain down the hill across John's lot into mine. And at this time of year, you can come in and I get a free skating rink. Okay, it could be deemed beneficial, but it's not. And I'm very concerned about somebody messing around with this particular property that they're talking about creating. That's one of my issues. And I recognize that they have to go through all of the processes to make sure that there will be no problems, but I just don't know how you can do that with Mother Nature. I really don't. If they go in the springtime, they might see something that's a problem. They might not. If they go in the summertime, they might not. And come fall, all of a sudden, we could have a big problem. And then the onus is going to be on us as homeowners to try to take somebody else to task for something that's been done. And I have to register my opposition to this because I don't want to get put into that position. That's my number one. And my number two, of course, is given the elevation of the proposed lot and the building of a new house, I just don't want to have to look at a ginormous house, okay? I know you guys can't do anything about that because your job is to see that it meets all municipal rules and regulations, and I honor that, but I do want my name on file as having strongly objected to it. That's all I have to say.
Duly
Okay.
noted. Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
comments. And obviously, to the applicant, in many cases in established areas, what we end up with are the applicant actually going and knocking on the neighbors' doors and saying, "Hi, we're here. This is what we're proposing. Do you have any concerns? Is there anything that we can do in order to mitigate those concerns?" I think, from what I understand, save and accept, whether it's a great big building or a small building or something, that meets all the municipal regulations. And I was, I think, the one that asked staff if there was anything that had been submitted relative to the property that would be created. And members of the committee, I don't know if these gentlemen were privileged to it, but we did see what would be a footprint drawing, which shows how any development on that property could and would fit within the municipal regulations. And again, typically we suggest to the applicants that they do that with their neighbors, because what happens, the concerns that they have, you might not be aware of. And when that does happen, we've had, for example, as one gentleman suggested, an environmental assessment done. Now, that could still be required by the town at the point when a site plan application is filed, whether you're developing it or anybody else is developing it. We see a lot of that happening. So just to, I'm not giving you assurances here that that would happen. However, it's certainly something that the town can require at site plan application. And I see the planner, one of the planners there, shaking his head. I noticed in the notes that were sent, and this is typical, we see them all the time, that certain things like architectural review, for example, in stable neighborhoods, has to be vetted through different committees and different staff to gain their comments, so that that the town is quite proactive. This committee has been very proactive when we've had an actual application coming forward with building design, including in the package, where we've said, hey, do you think you could change this or that? And they've deferred and come back on a number of occasions with modified plans, and those people in the room who express those concerns come back in and they say, yes, we've met with them, and this is what they're going to do, and we're now happy. Which, again, if you're not planning on developing it, and if it's going to end up in the hands of someone else, that will be their bridge to cross. But to the extent that when we see these, we typically will ask if there is information available. I'll ask staff if they have any comments on the concerns that were raised by the public in this case, further to what is already in the package.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we feel that these concerns would be addressed specifically through condition number 6, where we have specifically required, as part of the subsequent site plan application, that a grading plan, servicing plan, tree compensation, preservation, the standard items that we require through a typical site plan application. So there is a subsequent application that is required, and town staff simply would not approve construction for a new single detached dwelling if there were concerns specific to drainage, pooling of water, any concerns at all, really. So yes, this is the first step in the process, severing the land, and then of course there's a whole other process that is required after that. So we're very mindful of that, and it's something that we feel we did address just through the conditions of approval through this application. So we completely understand and hear your concerns, but again, if there were any issues that if the applicant at that stage through the next application weren't able to adequately address and demonstrate that construction could be completed in a suitable and appropriate manner, then it wouldn't be approved, that application. So yeah.
Thank you. So, gentlemen, as I mentioned, there are subsequent steps that would have to be followed. And if you put your name on the form to receive notification, you've got it. Wonderful, both of you. Thank you. So you'll be receiving information on this process and decision and what have you. But as a follow-up, when this comes forward again, not necessarily through this committee, because if everything meets the municipal regulations, it wouldn't come through us, but it would certainly come through the standard processes. So that's something to monitor going forward. No, I'm not. The only thing we are doing here is whether we approve this consent to subdivide the property with those conditions that appear here. That's all we can do. I wouldn't. It would be the town through site plan application. So yeah, I'll ask Matthew to go through that process so that you understand what happens next. Matthew, if you could elaborate. So I'll allow staff to answer that as well. Matthew?
Through the chair, I would just ask that the member of the public please come to the
Microphone. Yeah, that's my error. Yeah, you should come forward. Thank you.
So my question is, if you do the severance, then do you do a site assessment, or you do a site assessment and then decide on a severance? Which is the order? Because if you give them the severance, it doesn't matter about the site assessment, does it? Because you've already given the severance. So
I'll allow.
Does the horse come before the cart, or does the
No.
cart come before
So
the horse?
let me just stop you there. Okay, the question's pretty clear. I'll ask staff to respond to that question.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so in the event that the severance is approved and then the subsequent application that's required, once that's submitted, the application is circulated to internal departments, external agencies. So internally, it's circulated to our engineering department, so they complete their review, and if it's determined that a environmental site assessment or anything else along those lines would be required, then it would be requested from the applicant at that point. So again, typically, the onus is always going to be on the applicant to demonstrate that construction, again, can be accommodated and it can take place in a suitable and appropriate manner. And again, just to reiterate staff's position, town staff would not issue an approval for a stable neighborhood application if there were these concerns or questions and uncertainty. So again, it's a pretty thorough review process. So in the event that the consent is approved, and then if there are matters at the next stage that can't be addressed, then the approval simply wouldn't be issued. So it's possible that if there were matters that needed to be addressed and couldn't, that the land would be severed, and then maybe approval for the single detached dwelling just wouldn't be issued if there are issues that needed to be addressed that couldn't be addressed.
There's always a what if, right? So they get the severance, they sell it to a builder, he pays them the $600,000 or whatever it is they get for the severance, right? Now, is he obligated to do the site? Is that his obligation, or now he's got the land, it doesn't matter? Well,
through you, Mr. Chair, whoever the applicant is at the next stage, the next application, then yes, the owner applicant at that point, it's their responsibility, whoever that may be.
Let me put it this way. If this consent wasn't approved, there would be no next step. So we're not putting the cart before the horse. If this doesn't happen, nothing happens. That doesn't mean that if there is an environmental issue that cannot be resolved, that no permit gets issued and the consent stays in place, but nothing happens.
if there's an environmental issue, they don't get the severance. Is that what you're telling me?
No, the severance has to happen first. Because if there was no severance, if there is no lot, then why would you do an environmental assessment? Right?
Fair enough
Again,
point.
I'm telling you that we're not putting the cart before the horse.
Okay. Nope.
Thank you. You're allowed, the applicant is allowed to comment on any of the comments or questions that have come forward from the public. You can comment on that if you wish.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I did hear the concerns that I wasn't aware of from our neighbors. First of all, like the concept of what that property could accommodate would be a modest one-family home, and it would not, with a substantial backyard that would be part of the rest of the green space. As for the trees, the mature trees that are in the on that property that would have to be cut down, there's plenty of green space to replant and accommodate that. As per to the water levels that the water table that was mentioned, I'm aware of that. That's a typical problem in the neighborhood, but I don't think that, considering the distance and the open space that is available, would be possible to have an engineered solution for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any comments or questions from, oh, sorry, go ahead.
My neighbor John, earlier this summer, he was nice enough to come into my backyard. He has a tree that was struck by lightning, and then it has some, what I'll call, shrubs that are growing up from it, and he didn't like how they looked. So I said, "You're welcome to come back in the backyard and cut them down at any time." At that point, I told John, our plan was to try and do the severance.
I see.
And at that point, that wasn't a concern. He never mentioned about the water, and so it wasn't brought to light at that point. So I was not aware of that. So, it's something, he was more concerned that the value of his property wouldn't get what he should get when he went to sell it. And he told me in 6 years he was planning on selling it, and then maybe, maybe we could look at our severance then. That's the conversation we had. And I said, okay, thanks, I'll share that with Thomas.
Oh, okay, so there has been some discussion, that's good. And,
There was.
okay, that's, yep, no, that's appreciated. You're as the applicant, you're more than allowed to do that. I normally don't go back to the public once, you've had your chance, and he's entitled to his as the applicant, then he's allowed to come back and address your concerns. Well, he's commenting on what you had to say, so, well, yeah, I have to tell you that normally this back and forth doesn't occur, okay? That's just, when I started the meeting, I indicated what happens, the process that we follow. So I've more than got your concerns, and members of the committee have heard your concerns. You've heard a little bit of information come back in response to your both gentlemen's concerns and comments. So no.
We had a conversation. We did. I did trim his tree. Not a problem. I'm happy to do that. I listened to his complaint that he can't sell his house. People don't want a big lot. He can't sell his $2 million house. That ain't my problem.
That's irrelevant.
No, that's the reason. So that's part of the conversation. He didn't mention that, okay? He can't flip his house. It's not my fault. My fault. Not your fault.
You're relevant to the application, so I'll let that stand. Comments from the committee? Yep, Michelle.
This is a question to town staff through the chair. In the conditions of approval, item 6, I know this is not part of the consent, but it is a condition on the next step, which is the site plan review application, which comes next. And you indicate they'll enter into an agreement with the town respecting servicing, grading, tree compensation, preservation, and other site plan matters. Would it make sense, and can there be, in addition, to add environmental consideration in that language so that we make sure that the environmental considerations that might be an issue, given that there may be a water table issue, and this way it highlights it, and that it gets taken a look at as part of that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff do not object to change in the wording of the condition. My only suggestion would be environmental considerations as necessary, because just to clarify, through our review to date of this site, there's actually been no environmental feature identified. However, if that's helpful to any concerned parties and would alleviate any of their concerns, again, staff don't object. However, again, just I think adding additional wording as necessary in the event that it's not necessary.
I would agree to that. Yeah, given that the water table's winter, you know, we can't see what's under the ground there, and if there is an issue, then there might be an environmental study that's asked for. So I would ask to add that.
Yeah, so we can address that in a motion coming forward.
Okay. So can I make the motion?
Well,
Or we're not ready
I'm
to
not
make a
sure if
motion?
we're all,
Oh, sorry. Okay, well,
yeah, I'll come back to that in a second. Any other questions or comments at this point? No. I've got one to staff. I know that over time, many of the streams and underground streams that are not, we'll call them surface, have already been mapped. And I would think even without an additional condition in there, those would be identified, or could be potentially already identified, and would, by nature of the location of the property, come up regardless. Is that something that is likely to occur regardless?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question completely.
I'm thinking about Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, for example. You know, they have throughout the town of Aurora identified streams, you know, high watermarks, low watermarks, and that of that nature. And whether it's existing or something that may have existed years ago, I know that there's some really good mapping, which either the Conservation Authority, which would be circulated, or engineering would have access to, and would be subject to review at site plan regardless. And am I correct in that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so this application was circulated to the LSRCA, and they had identified that this simply just, the site doesn't fall within their regulation boundary area.
Okay, so there's number one right there, right? There's, in terms of their regulation, they see no problem in it, right?
It would, yes.
Okay.
They did not comment on any aspects specifically as
So
it relates to the proposal. They just had stated that this is not within our jurisdiction, pretty much.
okay,
Yeah.
so then engineering may very well have that kind of information from mapping and previous records without having to go to LRCA.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's certainly possible.
All right.
And that's, again, staff do not object at all to the revision, to the change to the condition.
Okay.
This, however, it wasn't raised as an issue through the circulation of this application either, so,
it's
but
likely
again,
not.
we don't object, and it's something that, again, of course, would be reviewed through the subsequent application, so.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm fine with that. So, Michelle, if you want to bring a motion forward at this point, I'll invite you to do so.
Here we are. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through the chair, I would like to make a motion that in Appendix B, the recommended conditions of approval, paragraph 6, after the wording tree compensation / preservation, we add comma, environmental studies as deemed necessary, and other site plan matters.
So this is as it relates to files, consent
Yes.
application.
Yeah, so this relates to a consent application C-2019-14 and C-2019-15.
Okay, there is a motion on the floor. I'll look for a seconder. Stephen seconds. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. So you will be advised. Yes, Matthew.
Through the chair, can you just circle back and clarify whether or not the consent applications were approved subject to the conditions?
Subject, yeah.
Because as of right now, it was just to add the wording.
Right now, we just made a change to the condition. We didn't
Yes,
approve the.
so
Oh, okay, that's why I
we
was
didn't
circling
approve the
back.
Yeah, we didn't
Okay.
approve I'm just
So,
asking that.
Thank you,
the-
thank you, thank you, thank you.
That the conditions be changed.
The conditions, I stand corrected. Thank you very
Now we're
much.
ready to.
Now we can make a motion on the consent applications
Right.
themselves. So I'll look for a motion on the consent applications. Michelle, thank you.
Chair, I would like to make a motion to accept consent application C-2019-14 and C-2019-15, subject to the conditions outlined in the amended Appendix B, recommended conditions of approval.
Seconder? Stephen, thank you. Call the question. All in favor? And that is approved. Thank you very much. So we've amended the conditions and approved the consent, and you will receive staff's final on that. Gentlemen, you'll also receive copies of the consent approval. So we'll move forward then to minor variance application MV 2020-01 for 75 Stemmel Drive. We have been asked to defer the applications as the plans are being revisited and being revised. So I'll look for a motion to defer. Daniel?
Through the chair, thank you. Through the chair, I move that we defer minor application MV 2020-01.
Thank you. Seconder? Michelle? All in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Any new business arising? Members of the committee? Nothing. Staff? Anything?
Through the chair, not at this time. Well, actually, we may have a new secretary treasurer for the March meeting, so I will keep you in the loop.
Thank you. All right, so you will continue to act in that capacity until such time as a new secretary treasurer is brought to the committee.
Through the chair, yes.
Thank you. All right, I have no new business for the committee, so I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I move that the Committee of Adjustment be adjourned for tonight's session.
Thank you. We are adjourned.